Hey everybody, Danielle here, bringing you a quick intro to today's bonus interview for the Peer Diabetes Mentoring Summit. What can I say about Richard Vaughn other than that he is an incredible example of how we all have the opportunity to live happy and healthy with diabetes for as long as we put forth the effort. He has been living well with diabetes now for 71 years. He is a retired college professor, husband and father, and just overall amazing human being and incredible resource when it comes to peer support in the diabetes community. I really hope you enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed conducting it. Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here, and welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Today I am beyond excited to have one of the, I would say, most influential people in the diabetes online community today. I'm going to be interviewing Richard Vaughn. And Richard Vaughn was diagnosed when he was 6 years old in 1945. After almost 70 years of type 1, he has no diabetes-related complications except for some mild nerve damage. So today, we are interviewing Richard Vaughn. How are you today, Richard?
I'm doing very well. I hope you are too.
I am, thank you. I'm so excited to have you here, and I thank you for taking the time to chat with us here in the diabetes online community. So we're just going to start this off the way we always do, and I'm going to ask you to kind of share your story of diagnosis and whatever you'd like to share with us about the path that you have traveled from then until now.
Very good. Okay. It was 1945. I was actually 5 years old, and I was recovering from chickenpox and mumps. I had those diseases. I think they must have almost overlapped, and my body was going through a lot of trauma, trying to recover, and I started showing the symptoms while recovering. I can still remember little bits and pieces of that period of time. Uh, my parents took me to a doctor. He did not recognize my symptoms. This was 1945, and there was not a lot of knowledge about diabetes, especially in Southern Virginia. That's Roanoke, Virginia, where I was born. And he didn't recognize my symptoms, and he was concerned about the fact that I had stopped eating. I was refusing food. I think in the advanced stages of symptoms with type 1, the appetite is gone. And I was very skinny. I was so weak that it was hard for me to walk.
Wow.
He gave us a tonic, a big, tall, dark brown liquid in a glass bottle. And that was supposed to revive my appetite. It didn't work. I'm betting that tonic contained sugar.
I was going to say it probably had a lot of sugar.
Yes. And it was kind of like the old days in the West, and the little guy in the covered wagons stopped and said, "I have something that will cure all your ills." What do they call that?
Some kind of tonic. Yeah, cure-all. Who knows?
They call all medicine.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. So my parents took me to a second and a third doctor, same kind of thing. And they did not recognize my symptoms until a fourth doctor
Wow.
was consulted. Finally, he recognized some symptoms, and that was the first time my blood sugar was ever checked. And I was taken to the hospital immediately the next morning. In the hospital, I don't remember anything about that visit. I remember the visit to the doctor's office when I was diagnosed. My mother was sitting to my left. My father was standing in the doorway behind me, holding my baby sister. And the doctor, I don't remember the doctor's face. And what makes me remember all of this is that I looked over at my mother after he had announced that I had diabetes. Her face was as white as could be. Her mouth was hanging open. She was a big talker, but she didn't have anything to say. She was dumbfounded by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And has left it scared me. And that has left a really long impression. And I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
But I started recovering in the hospital, the animal insulins from pigs and cows, whichever. And I did very well with that. I started gaining weight and I was back on my feet and back home after several days. And from there on, I did very well. I had a glass syringe with a long, wide needle. The
Yeah.
needle, yeah, you had to twist them onto the glass syringe. And the needles were wide enough that if they got clogged, which they did frequently, you could take a little wire and poke it through the needle to
Yeah.
unclog
Oh my
it.
goodness. That is just, I actually went to Gary Shiner's office and he has I guess kind of like a closet of relics and that
Yeah.
was one of the things that he had. And I looked at that thing and it's just like, I am so grateful for technological and medicinal advances over the years, but I mean, bless you for having to live with that and obviously making it, not only making it work, but making it work well for yourself. It's just, it's mind boggling.
Supposed to push the needle into the muscle on the top of my leg. That's what the doctors had us do. And if the needle had any obstruction, you had to boil the needle and syringe to sterilize them. And sometimes some sediment from the water, we had our own well,
Mm.
and would get on the needle. And I would go to push it in, and it would pop as I was trying to get it to push into the skin. And my father realized he gave me my injections for a few years. He realized that there was something on the needle he had to file off. He had to work on those needles before I would take my next injection.
Wow. Well, good for him for knowing that and noticing it and actually being able to do something to make that, I don't know about less painful, but more usable.
Yeah, the beef and pork insulins worked very well. I was revitalized. I went to school. School was not so good. I had too many highs and lows, and at night I would frequently have seizures. Those were terrible. And my mother would come. She kept a little glass with water and sugar. She would stir it up. Uh, Quite frequently, it was my sister who yelled at my parents because her bedroom was closer to mine than theirs was, and she would wake them up, and they would go in. My mother would uh, get me to drink a little bit of that sugar water. My father was holding me because I would be shaking and having kind of convulsions and what have you, and that went on quite frequently. Um, but the beef and pork insulin was great, and
I guess
in school,
they didn't have glucagon injections back then, so I guess that was what had happened. I mean, because I know a lot of people. I mean, it's just so starkly different. I had two seizures throughout my teenage years, but it was just as, I don't want to say easy. It wasn't easy, but it was just, you know, my mom injecting the glucagon, and then I went to the hospital just to make sure everything was fine. But you know, but that's just to have to go through that. I mean, your parents must have been some amazing people.
yes, they were. Were uh, My mother would make desserts for me, sweetened with saccharin.
Wow.
Saccharin was invented in 1910, and so 35 years before my diagnosis, we were grateful to discover saccharin. I think it may have been the only artificial sweetener that existed back then. And something else, um, until we discovered saccharin, I didn't have anything interesting to drink. Uh, I couldn't even lemonade was too sour
Yeah.
without sugar.
Sure.
With saccharin, it was great. And something else we discovered: little tiny bottles with colored liquids. What was that? It was the birth of Kool-Aid. It was a concentrated liquid. It wasn't a powder like Kool-Aid is now. And so we bought one of each color and took them home. and we put water in a pitcher and poured in the concentrated Kool-Aid, added saccharin, and I thought it was heaven.
Ah, that's hey man, things have changed, but you know what? I think the bottom line there is that people were always making it work. We kind of sometimes perceive our struggles, and we all have struggles. Obviously, living with diabetes is not always a walk in the park. But I mean, even back then, with such limited resources as compared to what we have today, not only were you making it work, but you were, in heaven with, Kool-Aid. I mean, that's kind of bottom line. It's like the little things that make us happy, and we have to be kind of aware of that, how advantageous our positioning is today.
Absolutely. In school, my mother did not want me to participate in play periods or gym because I was very fragile and I would have hypos very easily. So my doctor wrote an excuse. Each year I was in elementary school, and she would go in the first day of classes for each year, talk to the teacher, explain what was up. The teachers had never heard of diabetes.
Right.
I don't think any of my teachers in elementary school had ever heard of that. And they did watch me, and I did very well, but I had to sit on the sidelines and watch the other kids play.
Yeah, that's tough.
It wasn't good. I didn't make friends like I would have if I was playing with them.
Sure.
They were used to me sitting on the sidelines and watching. It was miserable not being able to go out and play with them. But that's the way I got through. I didn't do very well in grade school. My mother tutored me at home, but for some reason or another, I don't know whether it was my blood sugar being, I think, constantly high, except for the times that I played too hard or whatever, and it would go low. The insulin was a 24-hour insulin. That's the one nice thing about back then. I took one injection in the morning, and I didn't take another one until the next morning.
Okay.
And tested urine. There was no device for testing blood sugar. And the urine, once tested, would turn different colors. The original color of the liquid was blue with a few drops of urine. And if it stayed blue, I had no urine sugar, which hopefully meant no blood sugar.
Right.
And if it turned various colors, I would have sugar. The darkest color was a reddish color, and that meant I was very high. I probably was up there like 300 when it turned red.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of reds.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, not having that information, I'm a big science person. I'm very self-proclaimed nerd. I think life is about learning, and I love to learn. But I mean, without data, without information, like, you don't have numbers. And I always say, like, even when I was diagnosed in the early 90s, we didn't have a meter that had exact numbers. We had a meter that you'd put the blood on, and then you'd hold the strip up against like a strip of colors, and you'd kind of guess like you were in between a certain range. But without that information, it's really hard to decide what to do, what changes to make. What should I do differently? I don't know, because sometimes I'm red and sometimes it's blue, and you're kind of just, it's very ethereal. It's like, oh, I'm basing everything off of colors instead of actual information. So that's just pretty amazing that, you are so well off and so happy and, living such a positive outlook on life and things like that. So I know you said grade school wasn't good. So how did things go as you got older? Like, teenage years, I don't know, maybe dating or, work or things like that. Like how did you kind of fare with that with your diabetes?
Well, by the time I got to high school, I still wasn't participating in gym, but I was making good grades. And it seems like each year I got better. I was adjusting to my condition, and I was able to handle things much more easily than I did at elementary school. And in my senior year, my math teacher, I loved math. I was a math major. And that's helped me with my diabetes because I'm so good. But my math teacher in my senior year asked me which college I was going to, and I hadn't even considered college. I told her, well, I didn't think I would be going to college. And there was a college just up the street from my high school. And she said, well, go there. You can live at home and go to college. And so, okay, I talked to my parents and I was eager to go to college. My
Nice.
parents said, no, you'll have insulin reactions on campus. And what would you do? And they wanted me to work at the post office where my father worked.
Hmm.
That you can stand there, you can sell the stamps, you can cancel the stamps on the package, and you can weigh things, and that will be a good job for you because it will be easy, and you probably won't have any reactions. And that was their idea for me for my future.
Well, they
I
were
wanted
probably just wanting to protect you, which is obviously a
exactly.
very normal parent thing to do. I'm sure they had what they thought your best intentions in mind, but I could see where that might feel a little limiting.
Well, I was stubborn, so my father got an old used car and said, "Okay, you drive to campus in this car." And they told me they didn't have enough money to pay my tuition, but I could have room and board at home. I had a car. My father kept it full of gas. All I had to do was earn money for tuition. So I got a job at a supermarket and I was bagging groceries and stocking shelves and all that kind of thing. And believe it or not, in that day and time, college wasn't that expensive.
Hmm.
And I earned enough. I started off at 75 cents an hour. And that was the summer of 57, immediately after graduating from high school. I made enough money to pay my tuitions.
Wow. It reminds me, my mom tells me, and my mom's 64, and she tells me, she's like, when I was younger, and she's like you're young, your age for your young. I feel like my mom is young for her age, or she's like, when I was younger, we go to the movies, we take 50 cents, it was 10 cents to get in the movie and 10 cents for popcorn and 5 cents for soda. And it's like this whole,
Yeah.
to us today, that just sounds like absurd. Like you can barely go to the movies for like $30 at this point. So yeah, and college. I remember I was just at the Master Lab sessions and you were at FFL. We heard a statistic during the sessions that the average person living with diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2, spends on average $15,000 per year on diabetes related things, which is kind of equivalent to paying for a college education every single year for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. But 75 cents an hour, hey, that's awesome.
So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Roanoke College. And then I went to graduate school, which was only an hour away at Virginia Tech. The colleges were nicely situated for me, but I couldn't just drive back and forth to Virginia Tech every day because it was grad school that was very demanding. I had
Mhm.
to have room and board there at a lady's home in town, Blacksburg, Virginia. My mother was very, very nervous about that because I was going to be sleeping away at home. Maybe I would have a seizure or something, but I
Right.
didn't. I think I actually reduced the amount of insulin that I was taking, so I would run high rather than low. And I think I was too high some of the time, but I never had any trouble with low blood sugar while in graduate school. I was there 2 years and graduated with a master's in statistics. So I had background and I liked watching my teachers. I thought, well, I would like to teach. So I did that. I started teaching in the fall of 63, and I have taught more than almost 34 years for my life. And I retired early, unfortunately. I had to retire early uh, because of a diabetes problem that I encountered in the 1990s. Uh, I started using the modern day insulins, no more beef and pork insulins.
Right.
And these modern day insulins, I didn't know much about them, but the more insulin you use, the more likely you are to gain weight.
Yes.
And they cause the cells to store fat.
Yes.
I started gaining weight. I wasn't eating any more than usual. I had no idea what was causing it. And then I started online with diabetes support groups, and I learned from my fellow type 1 diabetics things that my doctors weren't telling me.
Kind of how we
And
do
I,
today. That's
yeah,
exactly what we do in the community today as patients. I mean, I always tell people it's like the doctor is there and it's very helpful that they can give you some baseline of information, but you're going to learn the most in the world if you just get online and start chatting with other people that live with the disease, because the doctors just don't have that firsthand experience. So I'm so glad that you found that and were so proactive to do that.
well, it was dlife.com. Have
Yeah,
you heard of it?
they're still here,
That's
right?
where I
Yeah,
started.
yeah.
And I had made a lot of type 1 friends on there. And they told me about the synthetic insulins causing weight gain. I gained a lot of weight. I'm not even going to tell you how much. And my doctor didn't know what was causing it. He knew very little about diabetes. I just had a general practitioner
Mhm.
until 2007. That was the first time I had an endocrinologist. But when I found out what was wrong, and I already knew what kinds of food caused me to have high blood sugar, and the high blood sugar was why I was taking so much insulin. I cut back on my carbs. I was eating much less pasta, much less bread. I found the kinds of foods that were much healthier. And by doing away with all the carbs, I was able to lose the weight. I lost all of it, but it took me several years. My doctor here in Kingston, New York, where I presently live, diagnosed insulin resistance.
Hmm.
Type 1 diabetics can have insulin resistance.
Sure. Yep.
Of course, mine was triggered by the weight gain. I have several relatives with type 2, but I am the only person on my family tree with type 1.
Same
But a
here.
type 1, there's the possibility of having insulin resistance if you have relatives with type 2, and if you gain weight, then it's almost a sure thing.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
certainly like that with me. Yeah. So I lost the weight and I was taking metformin
Oh yeah.
along with my insulin. And with the metformin and exercise and eating only about half as many carbs, healthy carbs for the most part, I lost all the weight.
Good for you.
So very healthy again.
So you're not taking them at Foreman any longer, or do you still
I'm
take them?
taking, I was taking 2,000 milligrams per day.
And
And
are you doing that now, or are you done with that?
I stopped the metformin and didn't need it. I stopped for about a year. And then I started gaining again. You can't get rid of the insulin resistance. You have
No,
it for life,
it's
just
genetic.
like you have.
Yep.
Yeah. So when I started gaining again, I started taking just 2 pills a day instead of four.
Hmm.
And very well, right now I'm just 4 pounds overweight, so I'm doing very well.
Good.
I need to backtrack now, Danielle, and I'm leaving out an important chapter of my life. The first college where I taught, 1963, I noticed that there were some teachers on campus who were bachelors and young like me, and they were dating these beautiful young women. They were the students. They were not allowed to date their own students, but as long as the students were in their classes, they could date. And I thought,
Wow.
here are all these ugly guys dating these beautiful young ladies, and I got to get into this. So I took the yearbook from the previous year and started with the senior class. It was a small college. There are only like 700 students in that college, Bridgewater College in Bridgewater, Virginia. And I was sharing an office with the head of the physics department. And I said, well, I've picked these girls. are these good girls? And he said, no, this one's married. This one's dating heavily. This girl is not a very nice girl. He said, what about the junior class? And so I showed him, and there was a physics major, a very beautiful young lady. Her name was Wanda. And I started dating Wanda. And I was rooming in a house where a dorm mother lived. She knew the girls. And she looked at my list and she said, oh, here's the one I want you to date. She was down towards the bottom of the list. She was a sophomore. And I said, well, I'd rather date the older girls. I'd rather date the juniors. She said, no, just forget about them. Date this girl down here. And her name was Anita. Anita and I fell in love. I dropped Wanda. I lost my little black book with all the other names and phone numbers, and Anita and I were going steady. And at the end of that year, we were married.
Wow.
We married after 7 months of dating.
You know what? I have to say, I met my husband in August of 2006, and we were married in August of 2007, and we're coming up on our 8-year wedding anniversary. So I have no qualms with getting married quick. It's like, when you know, you know. It's just, that's it. That's it.
It certainly has worked out. Anita and I have been married now for 51 years.
Wow, congratulations. That's awesome. I mean, and that's what I was going to say. I know a lot of people have issues, finding a mate when you have diabetes. Now, how was Anita, is she involved with your diabetes care? Is she, what's her level of involvement? Or was she scared, or was she nervous, or how did that work?
Well, she didn't know anything about diabetes, nor did her parents. And her parents had heard of it, but Anita hadn't. She saw me through some hypos while we were dating. And after we were married, I had a few seizures. She helped me through those. So she learned very fast. And she was also learning how to feed me. She prepares meals for me now, and she knows exactly how many carbs there are. And she tells me, and I can rely on her 100%. And it just works fine.
She's a good woman. Obviously, she was very concerned about your health and well-being, and she wanted to do everything she could to make your life easier for you, which is obviously something that's very helpful because, I find a lot of people, they have, trouble dating or finding a mate because people are uninformed or they don't know. But more than anything else, what people do know, which is unfortunate, is that what they hear online, well, this person lost their foot and this person, it's all this doom and gloom. And I don't want to marry somebody that's going to have all these problems. But the thing is that that's not really what it is most of the time. Of course, that's possible with, poor blood sugar control. Anything is possible. But, I think that if you're dating someone and they're not open to learning about your diabetes and things like that, that you might want to just try to find someone else, because that's with my husband as well. He didn't know anything about diabetes when I met him. He wasn't, he didn't know anybody else who had diabetes, but he was willing to learn. And, I haven't had any, seizures or anything since I was a teenager. So that hasn't happened. But I mean, as far as, being really low and, being in the bathroom, like just sitting on the floor and saying, can you please bring me some glucose tabs? And, it gets you like really, sad. And when your low blood sugar is really low, and he just, he brings them and he, he'll check my Dexcom while I'm sleeping and things like that. I don't know that he does it. He tells me that he does it. It's just, you have to find someone that's willing to learn and support you. And I think that's really the bottom line, and not to be ashamed that you have diabetes, but be active and educational and say, hey, this is part of my life, and if you want to be part of my life, it's going to be part of your life too. So
very good. Dexcom wake you up at night?
It will if it goes low. Yeah, definitely. But my body actually, I'll wake up kind of independently of the Dexcom. If my blood sugar drops below probably about 70, I just wake up. And I'm very lucky. That was not always the case, because when I was in my teenage years, I had the seizures. I was, I think I was in the 30s. My blood sugar was in the 30s maybe. And I even had a seizure and fell out of bed one time, cracked a vertebrae in my back. I still didn't wake up. I mean, I didn't know that was happening. But now, as I've gotten older, And maybe it's as I've gotten healthier, because I wasn't very healthy as far as what I was eating, or my physical activity regime was not up to par when I was in my teens. So I don't know whether it's as I've gotten more in tune with my body, it wakes me up, and I'm very lucky. I know that's not the case for everyone, but if by chance it does drop below 60, my Dexcom will go off, and I do hear it because I sleep with it right next to my head, so I I keep it right there. So yeah,
Well,
good thing.
I have developed a lot of scar tissue. I hope you don't ever have to put up with that. Uh, I wasn't warned that this might happen, and having started so long ago and so many injections, I didn't start insulin pumping until 2007, and I developed scar tissue. And every once in a while, I'll have a high that I can't explain,
Mhm.
and it's because the insulin isn't being absorbed properly. And I can put my pump site in scar tissue. It doesn't show on the surface of the skin;
Yeah,
it's under the skin. And I don't know I'm in the vicinity of any scar tissue, and I see my blood sugar go up. I'll take an injection. I'll and it doesn't work. I keep going up, so I know I have to change sites.
yeah,
So I have. This is one of. I guess this is maybe the biggest aggravation I have with diabetes at this point in time: the scar tissue problem.
yeah.
It's
And I think that's
not.
a thing. I mean, when I was at the Unconference last March, there was a lot of discussion about that particular issue, and it is something that happens after continual use of the same pump site over and over again. And that's the thing. It's like we only have one body, and we are obviously diabetes isn't going away. So rotating pump sites is obviously a very important part of wearing a pump. But what are you going to do? Like you said, because you can't see it, and sometimes you
Mhm.
don't know where it is. So it's like you have to be aware at all times and be checking your blood sugar and being on top of it. It's kind of like it's like a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week job, but we don't want to be blamed for the burden, but regardless of the burden, it's still our responsibility. And you got to take it for what it is and do your best to kind of roll with the punches, which obviously you're very good at. So so that's a great thing. So why don't you tell us a little bit, because I actually didn't even realize this. I feel bad before the call, but tell us about the book you wrote. You wrote a book called Beating the Odds: 64 Years of Diabetes Health. What kind of prompted you to do that?
I joined a group called
Yeah.
diabetesdaily.com
Hmm.
and made friends there. And they wanted to know about my past. What was it like to be a diabetic in the 40s and the 50s? So I started writing blogs. Um, David Edelman is the owner of that site, and
I
he
know.
has a section for blogs.
Yep. I know David.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Very nice guy.
And I started writing blogs, and I had loads of replies, and they were interested. Keep going and tell us more. And I thought I was going to stop after my early years because that's what they initially wanted to know, but they wanted me to keep going and bring it up to the present time,
Yep.
which was then 2010. And by the time I had finished, they said, "Okay, it's time for you to publish this." And I thought, "Oh no, me, I can't. How can I?" But the blogs, David thought the blogs were good, and he brought them up, and he made it a sticky on one of the Type 1 group site. People were reading it and still advising me to publish. So I did publish in March. I had to have somebody to help me. I'm not good with computers. There was a lady who was a member, a fairly new one, and newly diagnosed. And she read that I wanted some help with working with the computer, and she sent me an email and said, "I want to help you. My job is helping people publish books." That's her profession, and it's her husband's profession.
Great.
Barbara did this for me. She resized all the pictures, put the pictures in the right places, and got it all ready for me. And I submitted it to Amazon, and my book was published in March of 2010.
Well, that's amazing.
I wanted to give her hundreds of dollars. She said, "No, you have helped me. I read your story. It has relaxed me. It has made me feel comfortable with diabetes. I'm not scared anymore. You've done this for me. Now I want to help you publish your book."
That's amazing. And that's the thing about, reciprocity. I remember for me, in my teenage years, it was early 90s, but like you said, still a lot of people didn't know a ton about diabetes. And I was just told the whole doom and gloom story. You have this complications that are going to happen, and you're probably your lifespan is going to be shortened and this and that. And, I was depressed, and I had an eating disorder, and I was overweight, and I was, doing all this stuff. And I mean, for me, one of the biggest kind of turning points, and I feel terrible that I don't know exactly whose book it is off the top of my head. I feel like it might be Sherry Kohlberg's, but I might be wrong here. So don't shoot me. But it was like 50 people, or the top people that have lived, 50 plus years with diabetes. And once I read these stories of these people, that had lived all of these years, and they had been diagnosed early, like you, in the 40s. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I can live a long life too. Whereas I didn't think that that was possible until I really started seeing that other people had done it. So I'm with Barbara as far as, I'm glad that she was so moved by your story, as I know a lot of people are, because a lot of people with diabetes kind of are just like, oh, life might be over now, or I have nothing to look forward to. But when we see people like you out here thriving and doing your thing, it's like, oh no, I can do this too. And that is invaluable. Like, there's no money price that you can put on feeling confident about knowing that you can live a long, healthy life. Like, there's no money for that. That's just priceless. So I'm so glad that she was able to help you do that. And for anybody else out there wondering, I'm going to put a link to the book directly under the video. So don't worry, you're going to be able to link right to it if you want to go grab a copy, because I'm sure it's great. So yeah.
You brought up something that reminds me of, when I was young, I didn't know another type 1.
Me neither.
There was no online. There was nothing. How could I communicate with somebody who could help me like you were helped? What could I do? And but it wasn't as bad, because my parents and I did not know about the potential diabetes complications.
Right.
We weren't scared because we didn't know there was anything to be scared of.
It's a good example of ignorance is bliss, right? I mean, really, truly, it's good to not know. That way you can't have all these fears popping up. So yeah.
And my doctors never told me what might happen. I wonder if they even knew.
Probably not.
You think maybe not? I've wondered about that. I didn't see high blood sugars as a number, because I didn't have a meter. I just saw colors in a test tube.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really, like you say, ignorance was bliss, and the things went very smoothly. I had highs and lows, but I couldn't identify them except by the way I felt. And so we weren't scared, and I had nothing to hold me back, and I did accomplish just about everything I wanted to do. After Anita and I were married, we had 2 sons, one born in 1966 and the other in 69. And when we moved to New York, one was about a year old, the other was about 4 years old. And they did very well in school. And they went to the community college where I was teaching. And both of them ended up being in my math classes one semester each time.
Wow, that must have been fun.
Fortunately, they were excellent math students.
I was going to say, you had to know if they were doing their homework.
I wasn't accused of giving them A's because they were my sons, because it was well known on campus that they were good in math and science.
That's good.
Anyway, then something happened. They graduated from college and they wanted to go away to graduate school. And they were both computer majors, computer science. So I started looking at the top name graduate schools in the United States, and one of them was Georgia Tech. They both went to Georgia Tech, and they even roomed together.
Wow.
And they liked the South so much, they stayed. So here we are in New York. One boy is living north of Atlanta, the other one is living in North Carolina, and we have to travel by plane to go and see our kids.
Well, at least they're still on the East Coast.
It was my fault. I sent them to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech,
too.
yeah, it was one of the top 4 schools in the country as far as graduate work in computers was concerned. So I don't think I made a mistake. They have very, very good jobs.
Good for them and good for you.
Yeah, we are going to fly to see them. We fly to see them each year, and once in a while they come up here. But we don't get to see our grandkids as often as we would like to.
Yeah.
We have 2 grandchildren in Atlanta.
Well,
that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I guess that's the way it is. Like you said, either, you got to move back down south or, you got to take what you get because I'm sure kids are going to do what they're going to do. Can't control them after a certain age. So, as I would love to sit here and talk, as I always say to everybody I interview, about diabetes and life and everything else with you all day, because I feel like we probably could. Why don't we go to, what are Richard's top 3 tips for thriving? And over 70 years, I can't imagine you could even boil them down to 3, but if you could, what would they be?
Well, my number 1 would be what helped me so much. Join, if possible, local diabetes group where you live so you can have eye-to-eye and voice-to-voice contact with other diabetics. That's invaluable. And if you can, join some diabetes support groups online like I did. Now, there are a lot of them. Oh my goodness, on Facebook, there are some excellent ones. I learn about new ones almost every day. I started on Facebook in late 2010, and even now I'm finding other diabetes support groups that I didn't know about. And I've joined a lot. I've joined too many. I've joined about 50, and I only have time to visit about 10 per day. So I'm sliding some of them, and one of my favorites is Diabetes Mastermind.
I'm going to write that down and I'll link to that.
Yeah, Diabetes Mastermind, the administrator is an endocrinologist.
Okay.
And she lives east of Boston. Her name is Dr. Sybil Kramer. And she runs the site, and I help her with moderation of it, and it's very good. I recommend it.
Good.
There is a secret group on Facebook called the Jocelyn Medalist. It's a secret group. Don't tell anybody, okay?
I think the cat's out of the bag.
And it's wonderful to be able to talk to fellow long-term type 1 diabetics and not have to worry about anybody coming in with advertisements and spamming. You don't have to worry about that in a secret group. And we've shared so much information, and we feel comfortable. We can open up and talk about our lives without worrying about somebody peeking into our website. And so that's been very valuable. I do have the 50-year Jocelyn Medal, and in the year 2020, I'll be applying for the 75-year medal.
Wow, that is an accomplishment. Do you display them somewhere, or do you display your medal anywhere, or do you look at it, or where is it?
Yeah, I have it over here on a shelf somewhere.
Good.
I did speak at the Friends for Life conference this year, and I took my medals there, and a few people saw it. I guess my number two of the three you have requested would be to strive for perfection, get help not just from doctors but from fellow diabetics. Uh, do the best you can, and don't be upset with yourself if you can't get everything to go exactly the way you want it to go.
I think that's
Uh,
excellent advice.
yeah, and that's a piece of advice that I've given a lot of people.
Yeah.
There are parents of children with type 1 who have sent me secret messages. My son or my daughter, 3, 4 years old, is having this problem. What should I do? I do not give them advice. I can't say, okay, well, this is what I did as a child. That would be ridiculous. It's a difference night and day between how I controlled my diabetes as a child and how they should control theirs. I tell them to go online, get into the very excellent diabetes support groups, and talk to the other parents, the experienced ones in particular. And that's the best advice I can give them. I can't say, well, if this low that your son is having happened to me, this is what I would do. I mean, I'm a 75-year-old now. It would be totally different. So I guess that's my number two.
I mean, yeah, the first two, I mean, it's funny because no matter who I interview, I always ask the top three. And a lot of times they're very similar. And I think the first one is that, a lot of people have that experience, is that a lot of us growing up, we didn't know a lot of other people have diabetes. And when you do start interacting with other people with diabetes, it really, even if you didn't even feel like there was something missing, you realize that there was something missing. And that patient to patient, peer to peer support, even if you're not, like you said, getting medical advice or whatever the case may be, just having people to talk to that get it, that know, what it feels like to just have lows and highs and inject and all this other stuff. It fills a void that you may not even know that you have. And I just think it's so important. And like you said, that it's free. You go on Facebook groups, I'll link to the one you mentioned, and go to 2diabetes.org and sign up and join a forum and just chat with people. It really, really does make a huge difference. I totally agree with that. So good advice.
Well, let's see. Number three. So many things I could recommend. I would just say, don't let your diabetes stop you. And you can be a type 1 diabetic. You're going to have lots of problems with your blood sugars, but you can, with the technology and the knowledge that's available in this day and time, you can keep things under control well enough that you can fulfill all your goals. I mean, I fulfill all of mine when it wasn't easy, and today it is much easier. My control is much better now than when I was in college, much better than when I was dating, much better than when I was teaching. I had problems when I was teaching, and teachers who are diabetic should not have those problems now. But you can manage to get through and fulfill all your goals with minimal problems in this day and time. So don't let anything stop you.
Yep, that's really, and I couldn't be happier that that's what you said as your third thing, because that's the whole, I mean, I call, my diabetes dominator, I call that a mentality. And the only thing that means is that you don't let diabetes be the reason why you don't do whatever it is that you're passionate about in life. I mean, whatever that gets you going, makes you happy, lights you up, don't let diabetes be the reason why you don't go after that, fulfill that dream, live out that passion. It doesn't have to be the reason. And that's my favorite. I mean, that's for me, that's what gets me going, is helping other people kind of embrace that attitude, because that's what it is. It's a mentality. You can do it. You can do whatever you want to do. And diabetes doesn't have to be the reason why you can't. So fantastic, wonderful advice. I couldn't give better advice myself. So yeah.
Something I would like to read to you.
Oh, please, please.
I asked my friends online before I went to be a speaker at Friends for Life. I asked them, if you were able to go, what question would you ask me if you were there? What message would you have me give my audience there? And a fellow medalist, her name is Judith. Judith is in the Jocelyn medalist group. And here is her message, and I love it. Sometimes I almost tear up when I read it. A message that I feel should be given to diabetics. Do the best you can do each day in trying to control the disease. No matter how well you do everything, to be able to coordinate the insulin, the carbohydrates, the body growth, hormones, exercise, and all the other factors that influence the performance of insulin with your body. It is an extremely hard job to have it perfect all the time. So don't get upset if you don't have 100% control. When my day is slowing down, I think about how I did to control the diabetes. And if it wasn't the way I wanted it to be, I go to sleep thinking I'll do better tomorrow. I get up the next day and start it by trying to have better control. I've been fortunate to not have complications, and with 73 years of type 1, I still expect to do better. Do the best you can because there are better days ahead with new equipment to help us, and you will want to be in a healthy condition to take advantage of those better times.
I mean, that she should be a writer. I was going to say she should put a book out because that's exactly right. Day by day. If you had a bad day yesterday, it's okay. Tomorrow's going to be another day, and you can just strive to do a little bit better than you did the day before. I love it. I love the positivity. I love the good, vibes and the outlook, and to have people like you to kind of show people like us, that there's plenty of life left to be lived and lived well. Again, like I said, it's invaluable. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with me. And when I publish this, everyone else out there that I'm sure will be eager to watch and hear what you have to say. So is there anything else after that beautiful reading that you would like to add before we sign off?
No, I just look forward to each day. I look forward to getting on Facebook and talking with my friends. I like joining the discussions that are taking place, and I get very good feedback from my friends, and everything is going well for me. I'm retired. I do a lot of exercising. I work out at the gym. I take long walks on roads. I pick roads with hills. I like climbing those hills and getting some cardio. I have to my left over here in this room is a treadmill that I use in the wintertime. I do a lot of good exercising. It's keeping me in good health. And I have no complications except for a little bit of neuropathy in my feet. And I'm very healthy after 70 years with type 1.
Amazing. I mean, thank you for being such a good role model, for sharing that about exercise too. I mean, I love when I hear people say that, especially, like you said, you're 75 and you're out there climbing hills and you have a treadmill in your living room. Obviously, I'm very passionate about fitness. My whole background, this is my basement. It's a gym because I love fitness. I love to be fit, and I didn't always love to be fit my whole life. And it just goes to show, there's no age that's too late to start climbing a few hills. So amazing. You're an amazing role model. Don't stop doing what you're doing. In fact, hopefully maybe you'll get a whole new list of blogs together and get another book out there someday, because I'm sure the public has spoken and we love to hear from you. So we look forward to as much more publicity for Richard Vaughn as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danielle.
All right, guys. So I will catch everybody on the next episode. I was going to say, not to say anything about any other episodes, but this one has been even more fulfilling for me than a lot, because I mean, like I said, just seeing you out there kicking butt and being so amazing, it gives me even more hope for the future. So can't thank you enough. All right, guys, before I get all, too teary-eyed and sad, I'm going to stop the broadcast here. And just like always, I will catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you.